And 56, and we are almost at the end of Genesis 24. So the previous session we ended with, so amazing was the faith of our fathers. They eventually died, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Rebecca, Sarah, all these people. They've died not having seen the physical fulfillment of the promise. But faith, like we discussed, is what they have seen in their mind, with their hearts, with their belief, although not seen with the physical eyes. And I remind you, Hebrews 11 verse 1, faith is the substance of the things they hoped for, and the things you and I hope for. Faith is the substance of these things. Faith is, it's not a fairy tale that we believe in. We've got faith in the living God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And faith is the evidence of things not seen, because like the Bible says, we don't walk by sight, but we walk by the Spirit. So the evidence for us of things that will be coming reality, our evidence of that is our God's track record in the Bible. All the promises He made to all these hundreds of people in the Old Testament. Look at how many things came true. Look at the fact that the Messiah came at the time that He was predicted. I mean, there's millions. We can talk for the next 5 years about how trustworthy God is. And our faith is based on God's track record, because we study the Old Testament. We study Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the faith of our fathers. We are studying this in order to build our faith, because we also need evidence of things not seen. And we also need to learn how to trust in something that we can't see now, something you are trusting God for in your own life, something we are trusting God for His kingdom. We are trusting Him that the 153 fishes that the disciples pulled out of the ocean, out of the water, you remember we discussed that. We need to trust Him that's going to happen. Israel is going to come home. And the two houses in the hand of the Messiah, the two sticks will become one. All those promises, the promises of resurrection. I mean, those things are what we are having faith in. And without seeing the evidence materialize from the spiritual, how can our faith be strong? How will your faith survive in the end of days when you don't fill yourself now with the evidence of things not seen, things we are studying, things we can believe happened in the life of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Adam, and Noah, and Abel, and Joshua, and David, and all these fathers of the faith. So may your faith carry you through dark times in your life currently, but also in the dark times lying ahead for the believers, for the saints, for the chosen ones, for those who will not bow before the image of the Antichrist. May your faith carry you through lonely times and difficult times and long times. And if you feel like you're faltering, or you feel that you cannot go on anymore, remember Abraham, how many years he waited between the promise of a son and the birth of his son. Remember Rebecca, when you start to get tired of waiting, remember how tired she was when she was feeding those 10 camels who were drinking 200 liters of water in 3 minutes. And remember that you can ask the same question to the Messiah that the desperate father in Mark 9 verse 24 asked Messiah, when this father needed a miracle in his son's life. Mark 9:24, and straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears in his eyes, "O my master, I do believe, but still help my unbelief." So when you get to that stage where you are growing tired or weary, and things happen around you and your faith starts faltering, you can also repeat this cry from this father, "I do believe, Yeshua, I do believe, Master, but help my unbelief." Because he, I think it's in the book of Hebrews, Yeshua is the source of our faith. So when your well runs dry, you know that his well, the living waters, will never run dry. Okay, so we looked at Genesis 24 verse 60, where Laban and Bethuel blessed Rebecca, and they said she'll be the mother of thousands of millions. And we looked at that beautiful promise and that fulfillment already. We can see it in the history of Israel, and we also see it in the world today, and we see it in the book of Revelations, how it will be at the end of times. But let's look at the rest of this blessing they did, which is profoundly important. So Laban and Bethuel says to Rebekah, let your seed possess the gate of those which hate them. All right, so let your seed, and keep in mind, every time we talk about the seed of Abraham and the seed of the tree of life, and the seed of Rebekah, it's single. It's not seeds. It's not plural. Although out of the seed, which we remember we said is the word of God, and that is the seed from the tree of life. So that seed, which is spiritual, is then manifested physically in a person like Rebecca and Abraham, and that seed then multiplies in children. So out of your physical body comes children, but some of the children will have the seed, singular, of the tree of life in them, meaning they'll accept the authority and the love of God. Like in Rebecca's case, the seed out of her body basically went into Jacob. Because remember, Esau at the end of the day, we'll get to that, was a sinful man. And he had no desire for the birthright. And we have to discuss the birthright as well, because if you don't have a desire for the birthright, to carry the name of the family and to be the one that God blesses, then you don't have a desire for God. And that was evident in the life of Esau. He was willing to sell his birthright just because he was freaking hungry. And his birthright meant so much to him that he sold it for a piece of lentil soup. Right? But Jacob had that seed inside of him. And we'll get to Jacob. Oh, there's so much to talk about Jacob. But that beautiful seed of the word of the tree of life was inside of Jacob through Rebekah, through Isaac. But Esau did not have that. But still, out of Jacob then came the 12 tribes, and out of the 12 tribes came the two houses, Judah and Israel, and it's a huge genealogy. But throughout all of that, Paul ends up in the book of Hebrews, and I don't have the verse in front of me. I'm just thinking of it now, where he explains that the seed is singular because it refers to the Messiah. The Messiah from the beginning. Remember Genesis 3:15, and he said to the serpent, your seed and the woman's seed will be in conflict. And here we see that Laban, without him being basically in the religion, he's just by prophetic utterance saying the same thing. Let your seed possess the gate of those, the seed from the serpent, who hates your seed. And her seed was Israel. And then if you look at Esau, the descendants of Esau and the descendants of Ishmael, the Philistines and all these desert nomadic people were all against Israel. They were always fighting against them, the Midianites. And their forefathers were Ishmael and Esau. And those are the nations that hated Israel so much. But it's of course much more than that, because it's not about the physical seed of the Philistines. It's about the seed from the serpent, from the tree of life that's inside these people, that is hating the people of God. Because who else hates God and his people more than the serpent? So the nations that he's using, and even the religious institutions that he's using, that hates the Torah and that hates this whole concept of Israel and Judah, that's the seed from the serpent inside these people. And Paul explains it's singular. because it refers to the Messiah. From the beginning, you eat from the tree of life, and the Messiah is inside of you. You fight against the difficulty from the tree of knowledge. I mean, all of us fight against temptations and sin every single day of our life. But we are eating the tree of life. Therefore, this love and desire is the seed inside of us, which is what was found in Abraham. And that's why God chose Abraham from all the people under the kingdom of Babel, of King Nimrod. Abraham was the one that was chosen because he was standing in front of all these idols and he was looking for God. I mean, I think I told you that story. And that's why Rebecca was chosen. Out of all the women that came to the well, she had this beautiful seed inside of her to say, even if she didn't know that she was doing a hugely prophetic thing, she was feeding the camels. And between Isaac and Ishmael, Isaac had the seed in him. He was the son of promise. But between Jacob and Esau, both were born at the same time. Both were born out of one mother and one father. So both of them had the absolute same opportunity. But yet the seed of the serpent was inside Esau. Even, and it might sound unfair, and maybe I'm taking a little bit extra time now, but let me explain this, because people tend to point a finger at God and says, well, God preordains all these things. So poor Esau had no choice. He was born with the seed of the serpent in him. And Jacob was born with the seed of God in him. Because God made the promise to Rebecca that the youngest would serve, the older would serve the younger. We still have to get to that. But remember, God also knows the end from the beginning. So even before you were born, He knows exactly how you are going to treat Him and how you are going to feel about Him. So if Esau in his mother's womb already received the seed of the serpent, that's because God knew that was his character. That is what his character will be like. So when He made the promise to Rebecca that the older will serve the younger, but the younger will actually be the one that will receive the birthright, although the older, the firstborn, was supposed to receive the birthright. That wasn't made because God was unfair. Because then we can debate this forever. Then God is unfair, and then poor Esau, poor Cain. Remember Cain and Abel? Then poor Cain never stood a chance if it was God's unfairness. No, it's your own choice when you grow up how you're going to be. But God knows already before you're even born. He knows how you're going to be, so He can make those kind of promises even before you are born. I hope that makes sense to you. All right, so let's return. So Rebecca, Laban is blessing her. May your seed, your descendants, that has the seed of God in them, that has Yeshua, the word in them, from the tree of life, may they possess, may they take over and conquer, triumph, win over the gate of those which hate them, of all those that has the seed of the serpent in them and that wants to kill your descendants, Israel. All right. So possess the gate of those which hate them. I'm gonna take a lot of time to explain this because, and I know most of you have probably read this verse 100 times, and you never spent more than 10 minutes discussing this part of the sentence, of the verse. But possessing the gate is extremely significant, and it's prophetic in the utmost, all the way to Revelations. Oh, it's just amazing. Today we will say something like, let them destroy those who hate them with a nuclear bomb. That's what we would say in the same kind of context. That's what it means to possess the gate. Let the seed of Rebecca destroy all the people that hates Israel with a nuclear bomb. It's got the same meaning. Possessing your enemy's gates in ancient times meant that you are victorious over your enemy. So please see the spiritual in what we're discussing now. So you've entered the gate of the city of your enemy, right? You've broken down the walls and you are taking ownership of the gate. You are taking authority of the gate of that city. And therefore, you are taking ownership of the city. So the moment you possess the gate, you possess the city. And be reminded, how much did we talk about the city on a hill, the city on a mountain, of which the light cannot be hidden. So we know how important a city is, and the wall around the city, and the mountain, and the people that is living in that city. They let because Yeshua says, you're the light of the world. So the people living in the city, which we call Jerusalem, not the physical today, the physical location, yes, that's where the New Jerusalem will come to. We've discussed that. But this spiritual concept of the city of Jerusalem, those people that live inside that city, that lives inside the walls, which we don't have time to get into that now, but the Torah is basically a wall around the city. Because you are living inside the parameters of this specific kingdom. So when you live in that city on the mountain, and you let your light shine, if your enemy comes now and possess the gate of this city, then they take the city over, they kill the judges that's sitting in the city gate, and then they dictate what you believe and what kind of light or darkness you will then shine out. So what they are blessing Rebecca with is not just for her 2 kids that's coming. This is hugely prophetic for you today, because you are the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If you are now at session 57 and you've started at Genesis 1, believe me, you understand now what the kingdom is all about. So see how this is having an impact and relevance in your life and your children's life. So remember when we discussed Lot, I explained to you that Lot was a judge, remember? He was sitting in the gate. When those 2 angels came, they met him in the gate, and Lot, stood up and he welcomed them, and he invited them into his house, to his own detriment. But why was he sitting in the gate? He was a judge of the city. He was a very important man. Those who sit in the gates are, in ancient times, they were the wise old men who had authority in the city, and who's been chosen to be the judges of the city. People will go to these judges to sort out problems and ask advice and get clearance on certain situations. They were the ones in authority, and if they worshipped Yahuwah, then it's logical that the city was ruled by these judges according to the Torah. So it was a righteous city. But if these judges were corrupt or pagan, then the city was ruled by corruption and paganism. And then that city is owned by the enemy, by lawlessness and by hypocrisy. So to possess the gates is not only military triumph and take over, or political triumph and take over, but it is spiritual triumph and take over, because the gates determine what God is worshipped in that city. Because whoever possesses the gates dictates who and what this city is, what they believe, what they do, and how they live. Ruth 4 verse 1 and 2. Then Boaz went up to the gate. Okay, so Boaz, remember, he was the landowner. Ruth was picking up food from the land when they were busy harvesting. Eventually, Boaz and Ruth wants to get married. So now Boaz went to the gate. And he sat down, and behold, the kinsman redeemer of whom Boaz spoke came past. And he said to him, please come and sit down. And he turned aside, and they both sat down in the gates. Okay, verse 2. And then Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, please sit down. And they sat down. And then the judgment came, because then Boaz came to put his case forward. He wanted to marry Ruth. And in the Torah, it is explained that the kinsman redeemer is the one that marries a widow if her husband died, the one that's closest to the man that passed away must marry his widow. And that's a Torah commandment. So there was another man that was closer to Ruth's husband that passed away. But Boaz wanted to marry her. So he had to go to the judges in the gate of the city to put his case forward. And it's a beautiful story, but we don't have time to go into all of that now. And the sandal was taken off. And the sandal covenant is so beautiful, because our Messiah took off the sandals of the disciples to wash their feet. He is the kinsman redeemer. Remember, we discussed that the Torah says you can't marry again if your husband lives still. You can't marry him again. So the husband had to die, and that's why Yeshua is the kinsman redeemer. We can talk forever about this. But basically, I'm just trying to prove to you just 2 instances of showing that the gates were where the gatekeepers, the judges of the city were. And people went to them to get a ruling, because they dictated what is right and what is wrong. And if they don't do it according to the Torah, then you can imagine that whole city being corrupt and lawless. But if they do it according to the Torah, then that city belongs to God. And that's what it's about. The seed of Rebecca must possess the gates of the enemy, so that everything can belong to Yahuwah. So we see even here in the beautiful prophetic picture of Boaz being the kinsman redeemer to Ruth, gathering with the elders of the city in the gate, where the judges and the elders sat, and where important decisions and rulings were made. These were the courts of the ancient times. And when we get to the book of Ruth, you'll see, but that's still very far, but there's so much to discuss there. See how important it is for a nation to possess the gates. Then you possess the rulings of the city. And if your rulings are determined by the Torah, by the righteous instructions, then that city belongs to Yahuwah. Matthew 16, verse 15 to 18. And Joshua said to his disciples, "And you, who do you say that I am?" And Shimon Kepha, remember his name was, your translation would say Peter, but his name was Shimeon, Simon. And his surname was Kepha, which does mean rock. Answered, said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim." And Yeshua said to him, "Blessed are you, Shimon bar Yonah." Bar just stands for son. He's the son of a guy called Yonah. "Blessed are you, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you." What has flesh and blood not revealed to Kepha? That Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. So Yeshua says, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in the heavens. The conversation that happened between them before they said this to each other was, people are saying that you're Elijah, people are saying this, people are saying that. And then he said, "But what do you say? Who am I?" And then Kepha said, "You are the Messiah that has been promised." So Yeshua says, "It's my Father in heaven that has revealed this to you." So this revelation of you are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim, is this amazing thing that is the rock on which Yeshua builds his church. And it's not revealed by flesh and blood, it's only revealed by God himself. So verse 18, "And also I say to you that you are Kepha." Kepha, we'll get to that now. It does mean rock in Hebrew. "And on this rock I shall build my assembly." Okay. He's not talking about Kepha. He's talking on this rock. And the rock is the statement that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. But then he says a profound thing. He says, "You are Kepha, and on this rock I shall build my church, my assembly." And he says, "The gates of hell shall not overcome it." So please concentrate with me. It's a lot of information. So the church will be built on a rock. And didn't we already tell each other that the city is built on a mountain? So you bring that together. What is the mountain? We did this before. The mountain is Yeshua. He is the rock. And like Yeshua says in the parable, if your house is built on a rock and the foundations is in the rock, then even if the storms come and the wind blows, then your house will not fall. It's the same here. The assembly is built on the rock. The rock is Yeshua. The statement that Kepha made, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. That is the rock. Kepha is not the rock. Kepha is a human being. He's dead. He's waiting for resurrection. But the important thing, we are busy with the blessing to Rebecca and her seed that said, may your seed possess the gates of the enemy. Now Yeshua says, I'm the rock on which I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not overcome it. Shall not overcome what? The church, the assembly that he is building on the rock. And the rock is the statement that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim, which is prophesied in the Old Testament, making this rock from the beginning, from Genesis, from Rebecca's time, from the seed promise of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, up to today where we are looking forward to the book of Revelation for things still to come. There's only one rock. And there's only one church. There's only one city. And there's only one God. So your Bible says hell, the gates of hell. But the Greek word from which that is translated is Hades. Hades. You might remember, some of you that might have watched with your kids the Disney animation Hercules. I remember Hercules was captured by Hades and or his girlfriend or something was captured by Hades and sent to the underworld, and Hercules had to go down and go fetch her, and that terrible guy that was Hades, his name was Hades, was basically Satan. But yeah, Satan is not in charge of Hades. That is typical Greek mythology taken over by the Roman Catholic Church and used to make people scared. But just not enough time to get into all that. But Hades means grave. Okay? And for those of you who have downloaded your free Bible software, if you go Matthew 16 verse 18 and you click on the word hell, and you ask him what is it translated from, you'll find the Greek word Hades. And if you click on Hades, it will tell you it means grave. The place where all departed souls go. So, people don't go to hell when they die. Hell does not exist now. Hades, the grave, the earth, because a lot of places the Bible says he was put into the earth, and that also is in Greek Hades, and in Hebrew it's Sheol. Even David was buried in, and his body went into Sheol. That is the grave. It's not hell. So the translation that says the gates of hell shall not overcome it is incorrect. It's the gates of the grave, and the grave is basically death. And we'll get to Revelations where Yeshua says that he puts both hell and Hades. He's going to burn both Hades and death in the lake of fire, which is hell. So it can't be the same place if it's three different places. Nevertheless, so what's important here is that the assembly is built on the rock, and the gates of death, the gates of Hades, the gates of the grave shall not overcome it. There's no time to go into detail, but the rock on which the assembly is built is not Peter. The Roman Catholic Church teaches and then claims that the popes are descendants of Peter and that the church is built on them and that they are the rock and therefore the church is subject to them. No. The statement of Peter is what is the rock. And that statement is, Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. Peter's name in Hebrew is Kepha. There was never a man called Peter in 2,000 years ago walking with the Messiah. That disciple's name was Kepha. Peter is a wrongly translation of the Hebrew word Kepha. He was born with the name Kepha. It means rock, but then they translated Kepha into Peter, which means rock in Greek. But it doesn't matter. I mean, if your name is Daniel or whatever your name is, then if you go and visit America, your name doesn't get translated into whatever that meaning of your name is into a different language. You have to keep your name. And that's why there's such a huge confusion between Yeshua and Jesus. But the same here with Kepha. His name is not Peter. His name is Kepha. But now we all know him as Peter. But I would like you to return back to the Hebrew names because it's so much more profound. So yeah, Strong's G2786 says that Kepha means rock. So the statement that Kepha makes, that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of the living God, and on this statement, which is the foundation of the assembly, the church, that is what the assembly is built on. That is the foundation of the church. It's not built on a human being. The popes are not what the church is built on. And it's just amazing what they teach. And there are billions of Roman Catholics today. And all the Protestant churches came out of the Roman Catholic Church. The ancient church history is just phenomenal to study. But the church is built on the acceptance and belief that Yeshua, the Word of God, that became flesh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that God, manifested in the flesh as Yeshua the Messiah. That is the rock that the church is built on, and the gates of the enemy cannot overcome that city on that rock. So on this statement, on this rock is what the gates of the grave cannot overcome. Very interesting what the context was of this conversation between Yeshua and Kepha. So if you read Matthew 16, I think it was verse 14, they arrived at Caesarea Philippi. Now, like I said, I'm going to spend a bit of time because I need you to understand this. It's very profound. Caesarea Philippi, it was a site of a pagan temple. Caesarea Philippi stood in the lush area near the foot of Mount Hermon. And there's no time to go into Mount Hermon now, but I remind you of Genesis 6, when the fallen angels came down to earth, remember, to consummate with a woman. And they, if you read the book of Enoch, you'll see that they arrived on Mount Hermon. And I don't have time, I wish I did, to explain to you how so many satanic rituals are still today being done on Mount Hermon because it's such an important geographical location for Satan. But there's no time for that now. But Caesarea Philippi, which is at the foot of Mount Hermon, is where this conversation between Yeshua and Kepha was taking place. And this was a city dominated by immoral activities, very, very immoral activities, and hugely satanic pagan worship. Caesarea Philippi stood only 25 miles from the religious communities of Galilee. So they were neighbors. There was a disgusting pagan city at the Mount Hermon, right next to Galilee, close to Galilee. And that's what we find today. We live inside Babylon. And you can just turn any corner and you've got a Caesarea Philippi on the corner. But the city's religious practices was vastly different from the nearby Jewish towns of the Judea area and of Galilee. In Old Testament times, the northeastern area of Israel became a center for Baal worship. In the nearby city of Dan, Israelite King Jeroboam built the high place that angered God and eventually led the Israelites to worship false gods. And I hope you remember, but this King Jeroboam, remember, he took the 10 northern tribes. And they fell into so much Baal worship. That's why God had them exiled and taken captive by the Assyrian king. And from there on, they were spread all over the world. And that's where we are today, remember. But in the Galilee, Judean area is where King Rehoboam stayed with the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, and those eventually became the Jews. So what we're discussing here is the area close to the Galilee. And of course, because they were such Baal, pagan, satanic worshippers, their religious practices were totally different to what the disciples and Yeshua is honoring. So here, Yeshua is standing with his disciples here at this place. And he's having this conversation. So it's very profound. So in the time of King Jeroboam, the worship of the Baals was replaced with worship of Greek fertility gods, like who Ishtar was, for instance. So the Greek fertility gods, that's why the immorality was so tremendous at these sites. So I can't even imagine what maybe the disciples were seeing while they were standing there with Yeshua. Caesarea Philippi, which, no matter, I've read this. Oh, here we go. The Greeks named the city Panias. The city was named in honor of the Greek god Pan. And yes, unfortunately, our kids are watching Peter Pan, Disney animation, and a lot can be said about the the teachings of Peter Pan. Nevertheless, years later, when Romans conquered the territory, Herod Philip rebuilt the city and named it after himself. But Caesarea Philippi continued to focus on worship of Greek gods. In the cliff that stood above the city, local people built shrines and temples to Pan. Interestingly, Yeshua chose this location to deliver a sort of graduation speech to his disciples. In that pagan setting, he encouraged his disciples to build a church that would overcome the worst of Satan, the gates of hell. But like we know now, it's actually the gates of the grave. But in the people's minds, this was the gate here at the foot of Mount Hermon at Caesarea Philippi, was the gates of hell, because they said this is where Satan rules. And the seat of Satan, and we find that in the book of Revelation, and we even find it in what's his name, the black American president, when he was inaugurated. He even had the same temple built. Just amazing. He had a replica of that temple built where the throne of Zeus was. You can even Google that. Just amazing. Caesarea Philippi's location was especially unique because it stood at the base of a cliff where spring water flowed. At one time, the water ran directly from the mouth of a cave set in the bottom of the cliff. So at the end of the day, again, we've got to do with waters and wells. And out of the bottom of this cave, water was flowing, and that's why it was almost like an opening into the underworld. And that's why they called it the gates of hell. The pagans of Yeshua's day commonly believed that their fertility gods lived in the underworld during the winter time and returned to earth each spring. Don't have time to go into 25 December, but in the northern hemisphere, 25 December is the end of the winter solstice and the beginning of the spring solstice, and that's why 25 December is so important in pagan worship. It's not important for the Son of God, who was never born in December. Nevertheless, they saw water as a symbol of the underworld, and through that belief, this city was built. And they believe that in the coming through the gates of hell, then from the underworld at this specific point, was their gods who traveled to and fro through those caves. I'm almost done. I see our time has run out already. I'm so sorry. Let me just finish this concept. To the pagan mind then, the cave and the spring water at Caesarea Philippi created a gate to the underworld. They believed that their city was literally at the gates of the underworld, the gates of hell. In order to entice the return, please God, will you come back to us? We pray, Maranatha, Yeshua, please come. The pagans do that as well. They pray for their gods to come. So in order to entice the return of their god, Pan, each year, and all the other fertility gods, and to honor them and to serve them like we serve Yahuwah, the people of Caesarea Philippi engaged in horrible deeds, including prostitution. And you know that's true because the Bible all over the place talks about temple prostitutes. Every pagan temple had temple prostitutes because sex outside of marriage is what, remember we said, the serpent feeds on dust. So sex outside of marriage brings death. Because remember we said that you become one with the one that you are intimate with. And every time you divorce or break up with that person and you become one with another person, there's dust left behind. There's a part of your soul that is dying. So pagan worship, satanic worship, he lusts on prostitution and on sexual interaction between homosexuals. We know that. We know it's against Torah. And today, I mean, how much are sex outside of marriage and homosexuality promoted? And if you talk against it, you are banned. Probably I'm gonna get in trouble if this goes onto YouTube. And there was also a lot of sexual interaction between humans and goats. Why? Who of you have watched Narnia? Apparently it's a Christian movie. Please. Look at that half goat, half human being. He's called Pan. He's got a pan flute in his hand and he's got goat legs and a human face. So all these things are coming out of pagan mythology, Greek mythology, and we just find it permeating in our world today. Nevertheless, so this is the place where Yeshua is standing, telling his disciples that all of this whole pagan religious system that is worldwide cannot overcome small little Israel. Small little Israel. Like I told you the other day, Israel still stands today. Jerusalem still stands today. Although in the physical, it's not the way it's supposed to be. Believing, obeying, good people, really following God with all his ways. But God's promise and his might is proven that although people have gone away from him, the Jews have gone away into the Talmudic religion. Although that has happened, his promise that Jerusalem will stand forever is still evident. All these other religions and other nations all over the world, look at how small on a map, how small Israel is. And yet, it has not been overtaken because God said that on this church, the enemy will not overtake. And we are the spiritual church. Yes, Israel is big spiritually, but looking at the physical, even with disobedience and not being, not returning to God yet, the Jewish people in the land of Israel, see how God still protects Israel and Jerusalem still today. It's just amazing. When Yeshua brought his disciples to this area, they must have been so shocked at what was happening there. Caesarea Philippi was like the red light district. You know the red light district in Amsterdam and China, where all the transvestites and prostitutes are. So Caesarea Philippi was the red light district in their world, and devout Jews have avoided any contact with the despicable acts that was committed there. And this is where Yeshua brought his disciples to say that these gates, this authority, will not overcome the church if the church is built on the rock that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. But between today and tomorrow's session, don't you guys want to do a bit of your own research? Go and research the gates of hell, Caesarea Philippi, the Greek god Pan, and all these amazingly interesting things. And then, we'll continue tomorrow.